The book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my dad has given me as a Christmas present, probably at least 5 times. I finally just kept it because I knew he was going to keep giving it to me.
Someone with your background and that growth mindset, what did it mean, particularly in your mid to late 20s from a work context, about your ability to form really good relationships with people where it didn't have a means to an end?
Using an app called Noom, which taught me about why I make certain decisions about food and what food I should eat, and really helped me to learn about myself and my body, and then also taught me a lot of psychological tricks, and it asks you to think about things like your routine and how you make decisions in general, quite unprofessionally. I don't even think I worked my notice period. I think I got to the amount that I knew that I could go and hire 4 people on and was right, I'm done. Let's go. And I don't think they minded too much, but I quite unprofessionally, I don't even think I worked a notice period. I think I literally told them that day and left.
Hello, and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. I'm delighted that Kathryn Strachan has joined me in the studio today. Kathryn, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing your story. At the start of every show, we love to get to know our guests. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and where your current focus is right now.
Yeah, so I'm Kathryn Strachan. I'm currently a fractional CMO and the author of a book called Scaling Success, Building Brands That Break Barriers, which is due out for release in a couple of months, which is super exciting. I spent most of my career agency side. So I started my career at Scottish Widows, Lloyd's, as a copywriter, and quickly realized that the corporate world was not for me. So I left in January 2020 to set up an agency. I set up an agency called Copy House, which specialized in complex industry. So working across financial services, technology, insurance, and really helping brands deliver their messages to their audience in a way that their audience was going to understand. And I scaled that company from just myself to, at our height, we had 32 people with a 2 million turnover. And I've recently left and exited that agency. So I'm now doing fractional CMO work, helping brands to build their brands. So going into companies who are often refer to themselves as the industry's best kept secret, and helping them set up a marketing function, launch that marketing function, hire a team if they don't already have one, or help to nurture and mentor a team if they do have one. But yeah, helping them to raise their brand profile across all channels. But yeah, really leading that marketing function, that marketing strategy, and setting a future vision for it. My book, I've also written a book both about building brand awareness from Copy House, which I did quite successfully, but now how I help my clients as well. And that book is due out in October, which I'm really excited about.
Great. And it's good to understand your professional background. Tell us a bit more about when you're not working, what it is you do out of work.
So many things. Oh my goodness. I have so many hobbies. I have a lot of hobbies. I'm one of these people that has 10 million hobbies. So I really love traveling. I'm currently in San Francisco as we're recording this. And I have a trip lined up to go to Egypt. I'm going to go diving. So I'm a diver. I love diving because it's the only time that the world goes quiet. And then my husband and daughter are going to come. We're going to explore Egypt a little bit. I have a husband and a daughter, so I spend a lot of time with them. My hobbies include rock climbing, hot yoga, spinning, diving, skiing, pottery, and I think that's it.
Great. And have you tried free diving yet?
No, but I got certified scuba back in April and have done about 30 dives since then, and I absolutely love it. I'm not sure if I want to go into free diving though.
No, I just had a guest recently who just does it, and I didn't even know what it was. But so thank you for sharing a little bit about who you are. This podcast explores successful leaders and what happened to them in the past that maybe made them that way, and some of the learning along the way. So tell us about your early experiences, Kathryn, in terms of what shaped you as a leader early on.
Yeah. How far back do you want me to go? Because I feel like
Way
I've been
back.
preparing for it for my whole entire life. My dad is an entrepreneur. So I grew up in a household where, he very much has a growth mindset. So was always taking risks, always pursuing new businesses. I mean, I still feel like every time I see him, he has a new business idea. So I grew up in that sort of household where, the sky was really the limit and you could make anything happen that you wanted to happen, which is kind of a really incredible environment to be raised in, because you then don't see these limitations or these fears that most people have when it comes to starting a business. So, we were raised in that household, and unsurprisingly, he has 3 kids and 2 of us own our own businesses. I had my first business when I was 3 years old. My dad had a Christmas tree lot. He loves Christmas, but he had a Christmas tree lot where he sold Christmas trees. And my brother and I made and sold Christmas tree ornaments as cute little 3 and 2-year-olds. And as you can imagine, we made an absolute fortune. I was telling the story to KeyBank the other day because one of my consulting clients is in the fintech space, and they have a strong partnership with KeyBank, and KeyBank was my bank account as a child. So it was my first business bank was KeyBank, really. So I was telling them this story the other day. So it's still is influential in my day to day. So I always had businesses. I always knew how to make money because it was something that my dad taught us and that, really influenced us. I remember going on road trips as a child and being forced to watch / read business self-help books. I think The Secret, I don't know if anybody remembers that from the 90s, but The Secret has been forced to us on long car rides more than a handful of times. And the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my dad has given me as a Christmas present, probably at least 5 times. I finally just kept it because I knew he was going to keep giving it to me. And business books are now a thing that I can't really enjoy because they were the thing that was forced to me as a child. When you're forced to go on holiday or forced to do an activity as a child, you then, don't want to do it as an adult. And business books have become that for me. So I was very much raised in that environment. And then I met my husband on a beach in Ghana when I was 22, so quite young. And we had 5 days together before he went back to the UK. He's from Scotland. And he said to me that if I came, he would wait for me. So 3 months later, I did, and I was able to take that risk because I knew that my parents, if I moved to the UK and didn't work out, my parents would fly me home. But also because I was raised already in that environment where, if you wanted something, you went after it. So I moved to the UK, and that's been 12 years now. But when I first moved to the UK, I wasn't allowed to work. So I was a dog walker, and I walked cash in hand under the table. London's expensive. You can't live there and not have any money, but I wasn't allowed to work. I didn't have the right visa. Hopefully this does. I now have a British passport, but I didn't have the right visa. So I worked cash in hand. And one of my very first clients was a vice president of marketing from Yelp. So I used to dog sit her dog while she was away on business travel, and would spend, quite a lot of time with her and her dog. And after a couple of years of doing that, she asked me to come into the office as a marketing assistant. So I got into marketing by first being a dog walker. And that kind of set the foundation for everything that came after. But I think that early influence of being raised in a household that very much was a growth mindset. If you wanted something, you went after it. And the sky was really the limit. So my brother, became a professional snowboarder and now owns his own business. My sister went on to become a doctor, or a physician's assistant, which is a junior doctor in the US. So we've all achieved really big things, but it was definitely because of that environment where yeah, we were taught to go after what we wanted and to accept risk and that you were going to fail and that was okay. But, they were going to be there to pick you up when you did.
Sure. Thank you for that introduction. I'm really curious about someone with your background and that growth mindset being around you all the time and, you having that in your brain as you were growing up. There's real positives with that, which we can see. What did it mean, particularly in your mid to late 20s from a work context, about your ability to form really good relationships with people where it didn't have a means to an end?
Yeah. I mean, I really like people. I don't know if you ever pick that up. So I'm quite extroverted. So I quite enjoy like spending time with people and building relationships. And I think that my dad is a natural salesman, so is also like that. I mean, he's the life of a party and, forms really good relationships with people. I visited one of his friends' house the other day who, I've known pretty much my whole life, but I didn't really realize the impact that my dad had on him until I visited his house. And he had like frame pictures of like him and my dad on the wall from university and from my early childhood. So, my dad was able to have that impact on other people of, being memorable. I think it's definitely something that you can call Dave Broadway is memorable. And I think a lot of that remains in me as well. So, I like to think that I make a positive impact on people. And I'm quite loyal to people. The downside is that not everybody is always equally loyal to you. And, in my career, I've definitely been let down and hurt by people who did not have the same morals or values. There's been some amazing people, don't get me wrong, who, have those shared values and, have been there shoulder to shoulder. But there's also been, people who have not. And that really hurts. And you do have to kind of learn how to not be 110% emotionally invested in, every single person you meet, because, that's A, not efficient or effective, but B is probably like the quickest way to end up hurt.
Talk to me a little bit about, and this is where I'm getting curious, with that growth mindset and that desire, which I know is attached to what you're talking about, and that the sky's the limit. When you're working in a corporate environment where you've got a boss and you've got different competing, I guess, priorities from yours in terms of what you want to achieve, just talk to me about how that manifested, and particularly again your late 20s, early 30s, in terms of how did that all work?
I'm still in my early 30s, but
that's what I'm saying.
I think I think that might have been one of the reasons why I struggled in a big corporate environment, because I've always really wanted to make like an impact and move fast and get stuff done and like really excel quickly. And when I was working at Lloyd's Bank at Scottish Widows, it's very corporate. It's also very traditional. So Scottish Widows has been around for hundreds of years. And is, a very traditional firm. So I think I really struggled in that environment because I couldn't really make an impact, especially, I was relatively junior at the time. But in big corporations like that, it tends to be about incremental change rather than like large scale change. And it tends to be about like slightly moving the needle, and people are very risk adverse and they don't necessarily want to do something like totally new or innovative. So, I always tell a story of being at Scottish Widows and spending like 8 months trying to convince them not to upload their blogs as PDFs because it's obviously really bad for SEO, which like anybody who has any sort of like foundational understanding of SEO knows. But, they were probably 20, 30 years behind where they needed to be from like a digital marketing perspective. And, there's only so many times that I can bang my head against a wall and like not have people listen to me before I get frustrated and then, become kind of apathetic if I can't get through, if I can't make progress, if I'm just stuck. And like, I think now I probably would have been better at, influencing and changing that, but I didn't really have the tools at the time, being quite early in my career, to like know how to do that, like who to talk to, how to like win influence, especially amongst like senior leaders, and how to like really make change. So, I feel like I know it'd still be slow if I, was in that position now as somebody who has quite, a decade more of experience behind me as I did then. But yeah, I think it was one of the reasons why, especially in my early career, corporate environments definitely weren't for me. I wanted to take risk. I wanted to go big. I wanted to make an impact and, change the world.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about that now, because there are going to be many people listening to you and watching this who maybe have a fire burning within them, have that kind of frustration that they know they are bigger things out there that they could be doing, and yet they stay in the safety and the frustration of where they are now. So talk to us about that point for you, about what was the catalyst for you to actually make that decision.
I don't think I really needed a catalyst, because there wasn't like one moment that like really sparked it. I mean, when I was at Scottish Widows, I was also building Coffee House from the side of the desk. I needed something to keep me entertained and to keep to light that fire, so to speak. So, I mean, I was building it. I'd always been building it from the side of the desk while I was there. And I knew that like if I stayed at Scottish Widows long enough, I would have, because I was a contractor and getting paid like a decent day rate, that I would have a nest egg to be able to launch and do what I really wanted to do. So, I stayed in it as long as I needed to have that nest egg. And then as soon as I had that nest egg, was out of there. I mean, quite unprofessionally, I don't even think I like worked my notice period. I think I like got to the amount that I like knew that I could go and hire 4 people on and was like, right, I'm done. Let's go. And like, I think, I mean, I don't think they minded too much, but I quite unprofessionally, I don't even think I like worked a notice period. I think I literally told them that day and left. So I don't think that there was one catalyst. I think I always knew that I like wanted to leave, and I knew that it was a means to an end as well, that, if I did it for 10, 11 months, that I would have, a safety net to launch a business with, and was doing, the business from the side of the desk while I worked there. So, I mean, it was good from that perspective, but yeah, I mean, you meet a lot of people in that environment who call it, the golden handcuffs. They get paid so well that it's really hard to leave, but they're definitely not fulfilled in any way. And they definitely feel trapped because, I mean, and I was on a relatively low day rate being quite junior at the time, but, the more senior people were getting paid ridiculous money on contracts and, couldn't leave because they couldn't, they could only really probably find a similar rate at another financial firm. And it would just be like going from one to another and wouldn't be fundamentally different. But you do meet a lot of people in that environment who aren't really happy and who are quite scared to, take that risk, to make that jump, to make that leap. I mean, I recently advised somebody who left a big firm to go and start her own agency. And so I've seen it recently as like an advisor and consultant, like how scary that leap is. But, what's the worst that's going to happen? So, I talked to her a lot about like, okay, so we have a runway, we have a plan, we know like how long you can go for before like you really need to land your first client. What's the worst that's going to happen if, in that 6-month window, say, you don't land a client? Well, I mean, the worst that's going to happen is you just get another contract at a role. I mean, once you have been, the head of marketing or the head of whatever at a big firm, you're going to be able to find another one. I mean, I know that the job market is not great at the moment, but you have the connections and the networks to be able to do that. So, I mean, I quite often think about like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Most of the time, I mean, we are not doctors. We are not saving lives. Nobody's going to die. I mean, you're very unlikely to cause fundamental harm to yourself or your family in most situations, most of the time. So, I mean, don't risk your life, or your health. But most of the time, I mean, these decisions that we make in work, especially in like, white collar work environments, are not gonna, cause that kind of damage. So what's the worst that's gonna happen? Okay, you have to go back into corporate world. I mean, is it that bad? No, it's not. So, I mean, why not take the risk? Why not see what you can do?
So let's go to when you set the business up and you had enough money to get the 4 people in. I'm interested, what is it that you'd learned from when you were 3 with your first business venture to going and setting that business up, and some of the things you might have done differently in that first 12 months maybe?
Yeah, because so I set up Coffee House in January 2020. which, as everybody knows, was 3 months before a global pandemic, shocked the world. So, I mean, it was a really great time to set up a business. I mean, from 3 to, how old was I then? About 28. I mean, so much. But I think I definitely missed some of the cuteness factor. Could have leveraged that for sure. I mean, and the opportunistic. So, I mean, when I was 3 and having a Christmas ornament, I mean, it was very ideal timing because I was also at a Christmas tree lot where, I mean, it was not ideal timing setting up a business before the pandemic. But of course, there was no way that I was going to know that. And, I decided right from day one that I didn't want to like use freelancers or, use external resources. I wanted to hire because I wanted to be able to build people, and I wanted to be able to nurture and develop people and like have people who also believed in what we were doing and could help accelerate that. So I also didn't have any employees when I was 3, unless you count my brother, but he was more of a business partner.
So tell us a bit more. You were in a very difficult period in terms of that pandemic, and you'd set this business up, which you had great aspirations for. Just talk us a bit about the challenges you're facing, more from a leadership perspective, the kind of decisions you had to make and the way that you were leading yourself and others.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really quite difficult. Obviously, like the world was in total chaos. From a leadership perspective, one of the first decisions I made when the pandemic hit was that I didn't want to make anybody furloughed or redundant. So, I wanted to keep the team that I had just built together and move through it together. So rather than furloughing or making anybody redundant, I looked really strategically at what we did. So before that, we didn't have any sort of specific positioning or like niches. Remember being at a networking event before the pandemic and being like, oh, well, we work across like financial services and travel and recruitment. And they're like, well, it's like everything. I was like, yeah, that's true. And then when the pandemic hit, we lost a lot of travel and recruitment clients, and we didn't even have like contracts in place. So like lost them like immediately. They just pulled the plug on their marketing in that panic mode that we all went through, during the first couple of months. So what I did was I looked really strategically at what we did and what we do well and where I saw a gap in the market, and saw that, we do complex industries very well. So technology, financial services, and that this was a space that like not a lot of other people played. So, I mean, one of the biggest challenges in agency world is there's 10 million agencies out there. And if you don't have a really clear proposition, if you don't really have a clear focus on what you do and who you do it for, then you're just part of the noise. And people don't know how to help you, and they don't know how to even what work to send you. So I really cemented our positioning and then invested heavily in our marketing. So got the bounce back loan and invested all of it pretty much into our marketing and like launching our marketing and really building our brand, which was kind of the opposite of what a lot of people were doing at the time when they were freezing marketing budgets and making cutbacks, to spend more when the world is spending less is kind of crazy. But what it did is it really allowed us to like accelerate out of the pandemic. So, a good race car driver knows that when they go into a corner, they slow down so that they can slingshot out. And, that's exactly what we did. So, by investing and setting those foundations and taking the time to, focus into our brand awareness rather than like slamming on the brakes, we were able to like slingshot out, and the pandemic, ended up being really good for us, which was great. And we grew massively over the first year. I think we reached the 1 million barrier in like the first year, which I think only like 3% of agencies actually do. So that was a really good move that allowed me to keep the team together. I mean, it wasn't an easy time for the team during the pandemic, obviously. So, I mean, I created an EAP program, so an employee assistance program, where everybody got an hour of mental health support once a month with a dedicated mental health provider. So I created this program, and it didn't even exist on the market at the time, but I found somebody who was like a therapist / like mental well-being professional, and got them to deliver like one-on-one sessions for anybody who wanted them in the team. I realized that the team your own networks are stressed out. So normally, like when you're stressed out or upset, you have people you can rely on, your friends, your family, your partner. But during the pandemic, everybody was upset. So everybody in the whole entire world was going through stuff. So you didn't have people that you could just, kind of offload to, or that you could rant to, or, share your emotions with without worrying about the impact on them. So I launched an EAP program during the pandemic that gave them that safe place where they could talk to somebody who was obviously trained, but talk to somebody who was neutral as well, who, they could tell anything to, and it wasn't gonna, they didn't have to worry about upsetting them or, the stress that it might cause by sharing their problems with them. We ran that for a long time, about 3 years, I think, until the team kind of stopped using it so much. Sometimes this happens with benefits, they stop having the same impact that they did at the beginning. And I think the world changed as well, and they maybe didn't need it so much anymore. But yeah, we ran that for about 3 years. And that was a really good thing that I did during the pandemic to keep the team together and to make sure that, their mental health was looked after as well as, their physical health.
And what was it that you learned about yourself as a leader?
That I guess that I do really care about people. And, I wanted to look after them, and I wanted to, keep them together and to lead them forward. So I guess I learned about my own resilience, because I think, there's been times in my life when I needed to be resilient from a personal perspective, but I think that was probably the first time when I really needed to be resilient from a professional perspective. Yeah. But I guess I also learned, I fell into a really negative trap in the pandemic where I was working 80, 90 hours a week. I think maybe a lot of us did, because the pandemic, you're just home, and I got so much enjoyment out of work that it was really easy to fall into that trap of, working all of the time. But my personal relationships really suffered as a result. My mental health suffered. I gained a lot of weight. It was not good or sustainable. And I really had to I fell out of balance, and I really needed to get that balance back. And I've worked hard over the last year, 2 years to regain that balance, and, balance my personal life with my work life. And that makes me feel much healthier and happier. So yeah, I guess I also had to learn not to sacrifice myself for it.
And that'll be really useful for people listening to this and watching this to understand what one or two things for you was that enabled you to turn that around. Obviously, it's your own decision point to do that, but what else helped getting the balance back?
Oh, well, I kind of had to. It got to a point where there wasn't another choice. I was heaviest. It started with my weight, really. That was the first thing that I really started to address. And then, a lot of things fell into place after that. But I was the heaviest that I had ever been. My family relationship was not in a good place. So my husband and I, he was a frontline key worker during the pandemic, so he was not in a good place during the pandemic. And after a year of doing that, we decided to take our daughter and travel Latin America, because we couldn't do it anymore. We couldn't be in the house, and not in a good place in our relationship, and not in a good place in ourselves. So we left the UK and traveled Latin America for a whole year as a family, which was great, but kind of allowed us to reset a lot of things, not necessarily fix anything, but reset it. And then when we came back, we had to reset and rebuild it. So we had that pause, which was really amazing. It was the best trip I think I've ever had in my whole entire life. We traveled all of Latin America, and we've been back 2 years now, and we still talk about it all the time. When we came back, there was a lot that needed to be fixed. It's if your house has really bad flood damage and you leave on vacation. It kind of gives you the mental clarity to then go back and actually fix the house. But when we came back, there was a lot that needed to be fixed. So I was the heaviest that I think I'd ever been, and felt really unhealthy, and had some health complications and needed to address it. So I 2 years ago now started a weight loss journey and lost 30 pounds using an app called Noom, which taught me about why I make certain decisions about food and what food I should eat, and really helped me to learn about myself and my body, and then also taught me a lot of like psychological tricks, and it like asks you to think about things like your routine and like how you make decisions in general. And losing that weight then gave me a lot of confidence. So that element was fixed, but then I needed to fix my relationship both with my husband and my daughter. My husband and I, we've been in therapy for about a year now, and that massively helped. So like having a safe place, which I did for my team, and then needed to do for myself and my relationship, have a safe place where we could talk, and we could talk through some of these things and, help address it. And we lived separately for about 2 years when I came back, but I've just moved back to Edinburgh, which was really nice to be with him and my daughter. So there was a lot of like personal work that needed to be done, both like physically, but also mentally, and with it like internally. It's kind of been a long journey back, but it is actually like in a good place now, which is good.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's very typical again for many entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs to look after their teams and make sure they're in a good place. But sometimes it's them that needs the oxygen mask first. It's very, very common. So I'm glad you shared that. I'm glad to hear that, things are moving in a different direction. So tell us about the future. Obviously, you told us about the fractional roles that you're taking on. But if you think about the next 5 to 10 years of your life, bear in mind where you've come from so far and that belief about the sky's the limit and anything's possible, what is it that you're going to be doing with your life?
Geez, I have no idea. I haven't even planned since the end of October. I don't know. I'm taking some time off at the moment. Or not off, but I'm working my consulting roles, which I really enjoy, but I'm using it as a chance to kind of reset and rethink about what I want to do professionally, and where I want my career to go. So, I had kind of fallen into agency world, and when I had set up the agency, I didn't even realize that I was setting up an agency. I didn't really, I didn't have, detailed laid out business plan or anything like that. So, now that I've kind of left the agency, I need to take a bit of a break to think about what I want to do next. So it's not a break in like not working or not doing anything. I'm really excited about my book coming out in October. So that's going to be released, which is super exciting. And it's brought a lot of like speaking engagements with it, which is great as well. But I don't know. I've only planned till the end of October. 5 years is a big question.
Yeah, well, thank you for having a go at answering it. And I just got another question that came up, which just came to me now, and I don't know if this is going to be relevant or not, but it links back to you being in that car with your dad and the family and you having the secret book. So if you were to have the ability to go back in time to that girl at that point, growing up in that environment, what advice would you give to them with the knowledge and, I guess, experience you have now as a 30-something-year-old in terms of what they might do different in their life from that point?
It's an interesting question, mostly because I don't tend to like think about reversing things in the past, because even things that like were not great or that went wrong or that were like even traumatic, I wouldn't change, because I wouldn't be where I am now if I did. And I also wouldn't tell myself about them, because how you then respond to something when you know that it's coming is extremely different than like when it catches you by surprise. So, I never really look back on my life with regrets, even, and it's not that my life has been perfect, because it definitely 110% has not been, but I never have had the mindset to like look back on my life with any sorts of regrets, because even the things that didn't go right or weren't the smartest decision, what needed to happen so that I could be where I am right now. And where I am right now, is the best version of myself that I've been. I'm always growing and moving forward. So, I don't have an answer, because I wouldn't change anything, and I wouldn't even warn her about anything, because she needs to go through everything that I've gone through to get to where I am right now.
Thank you. And one final, because you've mentioned it a couple of times, but I want to make sure that everyone knows who's listened to you and wants to find out more about you as a person as well. Just tell us how people can get hold of the book.
So it's going to be on Amazon. It's not out yet. It's coming out in October, but it's going to be on Amazon. And you will undoubtedly find it all over my social media as well. So follow me on LinkedIn to stay up to date with it. But yeah, come check me out online. I'm really excited for it. It's my first book that I've ever written, and is my big achievement for this year.
Well, Kathryn, I really enjoyed being the guest today. Thanks for sharing all the stories that you've had from when you were younger to what's been happening more recently, and really wish you the best for the months and years ahead. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.